from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
The Senate hearing from nominees for USDA, plus second-guessing a new chicken facility in Kansas, an agribusiness, the seasonality of markets.
Well, historically, when you've got crops that are near trend and you've got adequate supplies, you tend to follow kind of similar patterns.
Idaho potatoes see market limits lifting in Japan, and fish farmers facing a yield-robbing pest, and it's costing you at the grocery store.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. After seeing firsthand the crop damage caused by Hurricane Irma and with a planned trip to see farm damage in Texas caused by Harvey, Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue says the pressure is on the U.S. Senate to get his deputy secretary confirmed quickly to address those catastrophes. The Senate Ag Committee listening to testimony Tuesday from American Soybean Association CEO Steve Censky, who is nominated to be number 2 at USDA. As Deputy Secretary Censky would be in charge of day-to-day operations at the Ag Department. Now, Ag Secretary Perdue saying with producers in many states just beginning to assess the damages and losses from back-to-back hurricanes, we will need Steve Censky's counsel to help navigate the landscape. Now, part of that navigation includes the president's agenda on regulatory reform.
I know from the outside, and as I've been briefed, that there really are some good initiatives to try to make sure that our regulations aren't standing in the way of farmers and ranchers and job creation by businesses to do what is necessary. And I think some of that coordination is as well happening because it is an administration-wide effort. It's not just USDA that's working alone. USDA is working as part of the whole administration's team to take a look across agencies and across departments.
Censky was joined at the table by Indiana Ag Secretary Ted McKinney. If confirmed, McKinney would be the first ever Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Ag Affairs. That position was created when Secretary Perdue reorganized his leadership team. McKinney addressing concerns about trading partners who initiate non-scientific trade barriers against U.S. ag products.
Too often we play by the rules, but many foreign countries do not. So however we might have tackled that with all our friends in the other agencies that have a stake in international relations, I believe this is one we've got to take on. There cannot be a double standard.
A confirmation vote has not been set. Both nominees are expected to get approved by the committee. Also in the Senate Finance Committee holding a hearing on tax reform and specifically business tax code. Farmers and agribusinesses are watching that tax debate closely. The American Farm Bureau calling on Congress to focus on taxes, including making some provisions now temporary permanent. They also say tax tools like cash accounting and interest deductions for small businesses are vital to long-term financial planning.
Because farmers and ranchers are price takers, we need the ability to hold our commodities over from year to year. So we need the ability to store our corn in the bins or hold our calves over until we can ensure a good price in the market for those. And by using cash accounting, we can do this and not have to pay tax on those items until we receive the money for them.
Cash accounting was part of the discussion at the Senate hearing Tuesday. However, Washington watchers say it's likely the Senate will need to pass a budget resolution first. Now, that allows the reconciliation process to ease passage in the Senate. The president continuing to push the issue, including holding meetings with congressional leadership. Also in Washington, a memo from Interior Secretary Ryan Zink appears to be calling for monuments to have a smaller footprint in at least 4 cases. The apparently leaked memo to the White House would scale back 2 monuments in Utah, Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante, along with Nevada's Gold Butte and Oregon's Cascade Siskiyou. Currently, those monuments encompass more than 3.5 million acres, an area larger than Connecticut. President Trump ordered a review of 27 sites earlier this year. Tyson Foods is reportedly rethinking its plan to build a large chicken processing plant in northeast Kansas. This move follows a decision by county executives to rescind a resolution in support of the project. The company announcing just 2 weeks ago its plan to build a processing plant, hatchery, and feed mill in Leavenworth County, Kansas. The county commissioner is saying it would support issuing $500 million in bonds to help finance the project. But public outcry over the alleged lack of transparency of the deal, forcing commissioners to rethink the plan. A spokesman for Tyson says the company is now evaluating its options after the county took away the key incentive to build there. Tyson Foods says the complex would hire 1,600 people and contract with Kansas farmers to raise chickens. Turmoil continues at the world's largest meat packer, the JBS board, voting to name founder Jose Batista Sobrino the new CEO. The company is named for the 84-year-old Brazilian. The former executive's two sons were arrested last week and remain in police custody. Wesley Batista's son, 25-year-old Wesley Jr., is now head of JBS USA's beef division. On the meat front, the consumer prices are down about 0.5% in August. Those numbers just out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It shows last month U.S. meat fell on softer prices for beef roast, steaks, and hams. Bacon, however, going against the grain, rising nearly 4% from July to August. Record high prices on bacon reflect higher wholesale values present in the supply chain earlier this summer. Those prices have since fallen. Volunteers are stepping up to help farmers hurt by Hurricane Irma, plus crop damage in the Texas Panhandle after a small but powerful storm blew through. Mike Hoffman has those details and crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. There was some crop damage and irrigation pivots destroyed by a powerful little storm in the small village of Cone, Texas. Meteorologists from the National Weather Service in Lubbock surveyed the damage and say it was a microburst. The estimated straight-line winds hit 100 miles an hour. The path of the thunderstorm was about 2 miles wide. Some farm equipment was toppled and a barn roof was blown off. Acts of generosity are showing up throughout Florida, helping people recover from Irma. For instance, students and faculty from the University of Florida's Institute of Food and Ag Sciences helped a blueberry grower in Pasco County whose fields were hit by the storm. 200 volunteers helped restake 100,000 blueberry bushes spread over 25 acres at the Frogmore Fresh Farms. If the plants were left on the ground, a significant number would have died. Now, taking a look at the root zone moisture, there's some big changes here. Very dry in the central Mississippi Valley, but where the hurricanes hit, just barely showing up now. It's a little wet, but not as wet as it was, obviously. I'll have my forecast coming up. First, here are some hometown temps.
This is Machinery Pete, inviting you to check out my new website, machinerypete.com. Offering farmers tens of thousands of used equipment listings to search, let Machinery Pete help you find and value your next piece of used equipment.
Can lower grain prices be expected this time of year? Up next, Joe Vaklovic will discuss the seasonal tendencies of markets. And these farmers are fighting an invasive pest underwater. That story coming up on In the Country.
Unlock the power of ag technology this December in Indianapolis at the first ever Ag Tech Expo. Learn all about it at farmjournalagtech.com.
Joe Vaklovic, Standard Grain, our guest here at the Agribusiness Desk today. Joe, as we look at this time of year, even though we're harvesting, there's sometimes just not a lot of good news in the markets, and you like to look at it as maybe a seasonal thing that we can experience.
Well, historically, when you've got crops that are near trend and you've got adequate supplies, you tend to follow kind of similar patterns. It's very normal in a year like that, and this year I think it fits the bill certainly. It's normal to see weakness in August, into September, and really into the first part of harvest at least. You know, your normal seasonal low when you spread it out over 15 to 30 years, it's around October 1st, and it's very normal for these markets to evaporate into that. I think people had hopes this year, maybe not hopes, but they had some optimism in regard to the market because they thought maybe the yields were going to be light. And that could still be the case before it's over. But for the moment, you've got to go with the idea that we're kind of following a normal seasonal pattern here. You know, this is a bad time, and it has been before in the past, and it will be again. September will be a bad time again when you have a normal crop. So I'm hoping that we're getting closer to some kind of seasonal bottom here. Yeah, so as we start to wrap a plan around that mentality, is this being a seasonal bottom, we kind of expect this, how do we start planning for the rest of this year into 18? Well, if you're a grain marketer, a farmer, what you've got to think is, you know, this is probably not a good time to be making flat price sales. Okay. It historically isn't. That's not trying to predict what the market's going to do. Just historically, this is not a good time. When you sell off into this time period, it's not a good time to make flat price sales. You've got to be prepared for some sort of post-harvest event, and if you get into your post-harvest rally and you can tack 20 or 30 cents on the corn market or 50 on the bean market, that might be the time to play catch up on some sales, especially knowing that we had a big crop and we're still going to be well supplied.
All right, so some good strategies there and a good way to think about this market as we get in the combine. All right, appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep.
We'll be back with more Ag Day in just a minute.
For more information about Standard Grain and its services, call Joe at 312-462-4438. Ag Day, brought to you by John Deere. Where can you find the most comprehensive inventory of John Deere certified pre-owned tractors, combines, and sprayers? MachineFinder.com. Sometimes the best new addition to your fleet isn't new. Ag Day weather, brought to you by Creden's soybean seed from Bayer.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, if we look at the root zone moisture map, boy, we can see a lot of differences in some really specific places.
I know, it is kind of amazing, all the moisture that's come down in Montana and the western Dakotas. So that will start to eat into the really severe drought that's been going on in that part of the country. Boy, it's getting drier and drier in Iowa, western Illinois, northern Missouri. Now, admittedly, over the past 24 hours since this information was taken, it's gotten a decent rain, not heavy, but decent rain in those areas, so that should help a little bit. And we've been drying out in central and western Texas, the areas where the hurricanes have come in, southeast Texas, Louisiana, and Florida. You can still see on the wet side, but not nearly as bad as they have been over the past couple of weeks. Here's the weather map this morning. Well, we still have Jose sitting offshore. Basically, it's going to be a tropical storm, and it's going to be more like a strong nor'easter hitting parts of southeast New England because it's not coming ashore the way it looks, although it is going to take another loop. It's already done one loop out in the middle of the Atlantic, so we'll have to watch it just in case. Showers and thunderstorms end with that system coming through northern Minnesota into the northern Great Lakes. Should be scattered for the most part, just hit and miss stuff though in the heat and humidity from Texas into the Tennessee Valley. Next storm system out west, that's another pretty strong cold front with a strong trough out that way, bringing some more mountain snows and valley rains to the northern portions of the Rockies, even some in the central portions as well. Heading through the day tomorrow, then again, these are just hit and miss afternoon variety thunderstorms. The vast majority of the warm sector out of this system not going to get any rain during the afternoon hours tomorrow. Precipitation estimate over the past 24 hours, seeing some decent amounts, parts of Indiana and Ohio like a ½ inch to an inch, a few spots a little bit more than that. Adding in the next 36 hours, you can see the areas that get the majority. Well, most of that has already occurred in the eastern Ohio Valley, but you can see some areas across the northern plains and also out west like we've already talked about. As far as snowfall estimates, all going to be higher elevations, and we're going to see some decent amounts again with maybe 6-12 inches in some areas of the northern portions of the Rockies. High temperatures this afternoon. Obviously it's cold in the northern Rockies, northwest, but it is hot for this time of the year. Central Mississippi Valley into Texas, even a few triple digits showing up in Texas. Lows tonight going to stay muggy from Chicago all the way into Texas and the Gulf Coast. On the cool side farther north, and the heat just expands northward as we head through tomorrow afternoon. Here's the jet stream real quick, and basically the troughs keep digging into the west. The ridge holds in the east right through the weekend into early next week, and then we start to see the trough moving east during the middle of next week. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We head to Boulder, Colorado. First of all, lots of sunshine and comfortable, high around 80 degrees. Jonesboro, Arkansas, partly sunny, hot and humid, high of 93. And Cambridge, Ohio, some morning fog possible, then partly sunny and warm with a high of 83.
There's new market access for chipping potatoes. We'll have those details next on the Packer TV. And later, sea lice are costing consumers money at the grocery store. We'll tell you how these salmon farmers are fighting back.
Visit FarmJournalPro.com. Trusted analysis, professional insight. FarmJournalPro.com.
In news from our partners at the Packer, Secretary Perdue announcing Japan is expanding its market to U.S. chipping potatoes and resuming imports from Idaho for the first time in 11 years. The deal starts in 2018. Japan stopped taking potatoes from Idaho back in 2006 following the detection of pale cyst nematode. Sales of chipping potatoes to Japan were nearly $20 million in 2016. Meanwhile, leaders from Japan telling a Nebraska trade delegation last week that the country's not interested in a bilateral trade agreement with the United States. Instead, Japan telling Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts that the nation is holding out for the U.S. to rejoin the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's according to the Omaha World Herald. Ricketts says he's pressing U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer to negotiate new agreements between the U.S. and Japan and encourage Japan to engage with the U.S. in those talks. It looks to be a good harvest for cranberry growers, although slightly smaller than a year ago. The latest forecast calling for 9.1 million barrels. That's down a bit from a year ago. Wisconsin's 21,000 acres coming in at nearly 6 million barrels and 2 million barrels from Massachusetts. American craft beer makers have inspired a new generation of British brewers to reclaim their beers in a new hops revolution. Sales for craft beers are booming in the U.S., and British breweries are looking for a slice of the pie using the aromatic and bitter American hop styles. Hops are one of the most important ingredients of any beer. Until recently, though, hops in the UK had been slightly overlooked. It took the American craft brewing revolution to reawaken interest in British drinkers.
Because actually the American craft beer revolution essentially was influenced by small craft brewers in the UK and regional brewers like ourselves. But actually they then took it a stage further and they developed some really interesting beers.
Germany and the U.S. are the world's largest producers of hops, but independent UK breweries are starting to recognize the importance of good quality, locally grown hops. There were over 5,000 craft breweries here in the U.S., up from just under 2,000 5 years ago. UK brewers hope to recreate that growth in their own country. Up next, these salmon farmers are struggling to keep sea lice off their fish. Finding success has been a challenge. We'll have details after the break.
In the country. Brought to you by Kubota's M7 series. Learn more about the largest tractor in Kubota history at Kubota.com.
Farming and its challenges come in all shapes and sizes. For salmon farmers, a surge of parasitic sea lice is disrupting salmon suppliers around the world. Scientists and fish farmers are working on new ways to control the lice, although so far it's been a struggle. Luke Sheridan reports.
The worldwide salmon industry is trying to find a solution to a billion-dollar problem, a surge of sea lice. The parasites attach themselves and feed on the salmon, killing them or making them unsuitable for consumption. Once controlled through pesticides, sea lice have now grown resistant, and new approaches are needed to help keep them in check.
We're farmers, not fishermen, farmers. And this is absolutely a farming issue. And we're trying to deal with it the same way every other farmer that grows all of our food would.
Cook Aquaculture, a Canadian company operating in New Brunswick, is trying several methods to kill the lice and save the salmon. On board the Colby Purse, 10,000 fish at a time are pumped into a solution of peroxide in water. It kills most of the lice, although it can also stress and kill some of the fish. A gentler approach is this thermal removal barge. It's better described as a water slide park for fish.
We pull up to a cage with salmon, and those salmon have some sea lice on them, and we try to use our fish pump to move them to the top of the slide. The fish travel down the slide, and while they do, they get a warm shower. The lice release from the fish, and then we put just the salmon back into a new pen.
Another approach uses cleaner fish to coexist with the salmon and eat the lice.
We think this is the way to go because it's non-chemical based and it's sustainable, it's a local species, and we can get them from our waters, and it is their natural habitat, and it's quite easy to grow them.
While these methods may help deal with a problem, it's a global race to get ahead of it. Experts say defeating the lice will require new technologies and strategies, including through genetics.
We've deliberately infected our families with sea lice and then scored the number of sea lice that these attach to the different families. And we've come up with tables to show which families and which individuals are resistant to settlement by sea lice.
Farmers across the globe consider sea lice the biggest threat to their industry, with wholesale prices up as much as 50% last year. That means consumers are paying more for everything from salmon fillets and steaks to more expensive lox for bagels. Luke Sheridan, The Associated Press.
And that's all the time we have this morning. Sure glad you tuned in and started your day with us. For Mike Hoffman and all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
AgDay is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups.